Welcome to Classic Value Investors and Microcap Explosions. This is Mariusz Konieczny. We're talking about why is this a great business video series. Today I'm talking about Dover Motorsports. If you've been following me for a while, you know that on April 26, 2020, I wrote Dover Motorsports Perfect Coronavirus Stock. And if we look at the stock chart from that moment, that sell-off in April, and I also included this company in the how to profit from the coronavirus recession. But now the stock sold off to about $1 per share, and now today it's trading at $2.42, so it more than doubled. Now I want to talk about this stock for a few reasons. Not because I want to brag that I made a right call. I made, when you have such a big sell-off, almost anything you buy goes up. But I want to talk about the thought process and why this is a great business. Even though, if you look at some of the operating metrics for Dover Motorsports on Morningstar, you can see return on equity. I mean, it's okay, 10%, 7%, 14, 11. It's not superb like it is for some of the other companies. But the reason why it's not superb is because this company really shouldn't be an independently traded company. It's too small. So it should really be part of a bigger operation. And if it were to be a bigger operation, then there would not be redundancy of general and administrative and other expenses. But even with this, it doesn't mean it's not a great business. So now, what does this company do? Okay, so this company hosts NASCAR races. Okay, and here's Dale Earnhardt. This is a tattoo on someone's back or arm. I'm not sure, but if you don't, if you're from Europe, there's Formula One, but in the United States we have NASCAR racing. And I called it a perfect coronavirus stock because when coronavirus hit, everybody was panicking that and selling everything, and also maybe without really understanding how NASCAR business or Dover Motorsports operates, they sold off Dover Motorsports. And I called it perfect coronavirus stock is because I knew that it was going to be temporary. And here's why. You might be thinking to yourself, well, during coronavirus, nobody's going to be going to NASCAR races because they're not going to be allowed. If you look at the company's income statement, what I knew, and the reason why I knew about this business is, number one, if you are interested in learning about it, you can read this book, The NASCAR Way, The Business That Drives the Sport. It's a fantastic book that describes how the NASCAR business operates. So if you read it, then you understand the significance of what I'm about to tell you. If we go back to the income statement, what do we see for revenues? We see admission, so people paying for tickets, right? Event related revenues, and then we see broadcasting here. Okay, and now which one is the biggest? Well, obviously broadcasting is the biggest, right? So this is what the TV stations, ESPN, are paying to broadcast NASCAR races, right? So I didn't really care at that point that coronavirus came because I knew that they weren't going to cancel the races, okay? And I knew that the company was going to get this money from broadcasting. So it didn't even matter if this was zero or this was zero. And if it were to be zero, then you will also have lower expenses, because in order to have admissions, you have to have people working there. In order to sell hot dogs, you have to have people actually selling them, right? So this revenue right here is the highest margin revenue. You don't have to do much, right? The ESPN comes with the cameras, and then they write you a big check. And now, so there was a little bit of disruption because the races at first were postponed, but then they were just rescheduled. And in case of Dover Motorsport, they have two NASCAR races, and they just ran them back to back, and the race happened, and everything was good. And now, if we look at the 3 months ending September 30th in 2020, you can see that yes, the admissions, there was nothing collected for admissions. There was some event-related revenue, but look at this. They got almost 36 million for broadcasting. That's even more than what they got in the prior year when there was no coronavirus. Yeah, so this was really the main reason why I called it a perfect stock. And this was actually the first stock that I thought about when coronavirus came. I was like, oh, buy Dover Motorsports. It's obvious. And now let's talk a little bit about what makes this business good or stable or wonderful. Because if you look at the total revenues, they're not really. This is not a growth company, and you don't have to be a growth company in order for your business to be great. You just need steady revenues, and especially when a business that generates $46 million of revenues every year has value, even if those revenues don't grow. So as an investor, you can make money on those kinds of businesses as long as you have certainty that this business is going to continue. It's going to continue making that amount of money. And if you pay very little for it, like what you could have done or what I did during the sell-off of coronavirus, it was pretty much guaranteed that you were going to make money because it was so cheap. And what makes this business of NASCAR so fantastic is that you have X number of races per year, and all the drivers go to all the races because they need to earn points. And NASDAQ, which is a private organization, they run the races, but the races are held at individual tracks, and those tracks are in different cities. And NASDAQ gives those tracks like a long-term license. So Dover Motorsports has a license to host 2 NASCAR races. Okay, and it's always headed for the past 30 or 50 years. They always had that license. Yes, it gets renewed, but it really never gets taken away. And so once you have a license like this, it's like license to print money. And it's like a monopoly. It's like a monopoly for that particular weekend. So no competition can take that away. Even if there's another racetrack in the city, it doesn't matter, because the racetrack itself is not something valuable. It's the license to hold a NASCAR race. That's what's valuable. And once you have it, you know that the race is guaranteed every year. And since Dover Motorsports has 2 races, they pretty much are guaranteed that income. And also there's always this optionality that Dover Motorsports is the last publicly traded NASCAR company. Years ago, there were 3 of them. There was Dover Motorsports, there was Speedway Motorsports, and there was International Speedway Corporation. Both of these companies were taken private. International Speedway Corporation was bought by NASCAR, which I said is a private corporation, and then Speedway Motorsports were taken private. But both of these companies that are now private, when they were public, and also now, they have many different events or races. Unlike Dover Motorsports, which is tiny, it only has 2 races. The other 2 players have the scale to run these things more efficiently. So at some point in the future, probably what's going to happen is that one of these 2 players is going to acquire Dover Motorsports. We don't know when, because Dover Motorsports likes that prestige of having the races, but there were some I remember I was trying to push for the sale years ago, and there was an activist investor who was trying to push Dover Motorsports to sell because, based on previous transactions, one NASCAR race could be acquired for $100 million or even $200 million. So because Dover Motorsports has two of them, there's significant value there that could be unlocked if the company were to be sold. But because the management of Dover Motorsports wants to keep it like this for as long as possible, that the valuation is never reached. But nevertheless, the valuation is respectable, especially if you're considering it was trading for $1 during the coronavirus, and now it's for almost 250. It doesn't really matter that it doesn't have a full valuation if you bought it for $1. So anyway, so I wanted to make this video because growth is not everything. You see, as I always say, stocks represent the ownership interest in businesses. And when it comes to Dover Motorsports, when you buy the stock, you buy an interest in those two races. And it doesn't matter that the company is not growing. What matters is the quality of the income stream. If you look at the income statement, the company doesn't have to innovate, doesn't have any research and development, because it already has a race. It has a racetrack. It has to upkeep it, but it doesn't have to build a one. Doesn't have to come up with a new product. It's a very, very simple business, very good business with a huge moat around it. Yes, it could be more profitable if it was in the hands of someone else, but when you are smart enough to buy it at a really cheap price during sell-offs like this, you can make money even though the company is not growing. So I suggest to you, keep something like Dover Motorsports on your watch list, and every time something crazy like this happens, you can always buy it and pretty much make money in a, how would I say it, in a very safe way, even though it's a small cap or micro cap. You see, that alone doesn't matter. What matters is the quality of the business behind it. And in this case, the business is pretty good. So that's it for this video, and thanks for watching.